Okay, people, I am back in Washington to get my 81 Ford Courier here. And we've got some problems and issues here. One, obviously since I flew in, I wasn't able to bring a bunch of tools and stuff. But the in-laws, my father-in-law, I've got some tools and such. Two, I'm definitely having a bad hair day, but I don't care, and I don't think you guys do either. So, I noticed a problem last time I was here. Let me flip this around and show it to you. So that looks like some nasty old dark coolant, which it shouldn't be. It should be yellow. The bigger problem is that it's not coolant. That's oil. And it's not even mixed oil, it's oil. Now, there is obviously oil in the coolant, but there is no coolant in the oil. It's clean. So a little bit of history here. This truck, when I got it, smoked really bad. It's always smoked really bad, and the valve guides and seals were shot. So I rebuilt the head. I had a friend of mine swap it for me. I didn't have the cam towers. So after it ran for about 2 minutes, it seized the cam because it needed to be line board with my old cam towers. So we went ahead, rebuilt the original head, put new valve seals in it. The valves were actually surprisingly tight and in good shape. They only needed to be lapped. Put it all back together. It ran great. And at one point, after about maybe 2 weeks of driving it, I noticed a little bit of oil in the coolant, which I thought when we pulled the head, the oil would leak down into the water jacket, since the oil galley is right next to a water jacket. One of the other problems that we found, when he pulled the head, 2 of the head bolts, where the bolt is drilled and tapped into the block, has a series of cracks going straight from the bolt hole threads into the cooling jacket. Those cracks have obviously been there for a very long time. I don't know what caused them. It could be because I over-torqued the head. I don't know. But when I got it back, I ran it for a week or two, noticed a little bit of oil in the coolant. I flushed everything out, used acid coolant, cleaned it really well. Everything was great. Until last time I was here, when I went and got the Wagoneer, I noticed all that oil in the coolant. It's probably a couple of quarts, because it's down a quart now. And it wasn't that long ago that I topped it up. So the plan is I'm going to let it ride. I'm going to suck out the oil, flush the cooling system. I'm going to torque the head down. I usually run it about 80 pounds. I think spec is 70. I might run it to 100, and hopefully those 2 bolt holes hold. I'm going to do that, and hopefully it'll hold together. If not, I've got some AAA, and I'll have to rent a U-Haul and haul it the rest of the way. Not like I can afford it. But just to show you here. Okay, so the plan was to just use this hose to suck out the oil. But as you can see, that was a failure. As soon as we start pulling oil, it just sucks that shut. I don't want it sucking oil into that cylinder hydrolock to begin with. So, but the only other thing I can do is I've got this catch can here that I just ran for whatever, and I'd have to drain it a couple times to the oil change. I'm going to pull this hose off and run it into there, and it's going to take a long time because this will fill up really quick. I do have an easy drain off the bottom of it though, so I think that'll make it pretty easy. So yeah, that's what I'll do. Disconnect all this. Okay, please ignore the squeak. It's from all the water getting down on the alternator pulley there. So we flushed it out. We only ended up with about half the pint, actually, not even a quart. You can see that line right there? That's all coolant, and this is oil. So we ended up with half a pint of oil. I'm not even going to say there was a pint in the whole system. Half a pint of oil. That's all it took. So I flushed it out a couple times. Now we're running Dawn. That seems to be the end-all be-all as far as cleaning oil out of cooling systems. Everybody says it works. One of the other problems I noticed, I don't think you can see it. It appears on the water pump is leaking oil. It's really annoys me. I got one ordered. I'm going to bring it with me. It's really not a hard one to change. So if it really starts puking water, I'll swap it on the road. I've got this rig. I've got to rearrange all this, but I've got all my heavy shop tools. That counter, or that bench there, weighs a ton. Some of it's going to go in here, the rest of it's going to go here. This is going to be a heavy load. This, unfortunately, this trailer is really rotten. Let's see here. So we're going to have to bolster it because there's nothing on the backside there keeping this from coming across. If I got a 2x4 or 2x6, even better, and ran it across there, I think that'd be all I'd really have to have, and just make sure that stuff doesn't go flying off. So with that, and then of course there's some storage up here. This used to be a teardrop trailer. It's a 46 KC teardrop trailer, and somebody converted it into this utility trailer. But it tows really nice. It's really light. Even this thing completely packed full of shop supplies and smaller tools. This thing, the Courier, hauled it just fine. So, yeah. But unfortunately, get inside here. Uh-oh. Be all swelled up and not openable. There it goes. You see, it's pretty rotten. There's a pretty good sized hole there. Yeah. You got this little kicker here. But I think if I put a 2x6 along the wall, I think it'd be enough to keep it from coming apart. Maybe. I don't know. We're gonna put the big stuff in this though. The big, not necessarily the heavy stuff, just the big square stuff, because I should be able to Tetris it so that the load doesn't shift, and then I don't have everything, you know, go around the corner and then have everything slide over to the side and just blow this whole rotten plywood out. So like that bench will go in here. My cherry pickers will be disassembled and they'll probably lay down along the sides inside. I've got a parts washer that can go in here. I gotta do something with these wheels and tires. I don't know what yet. Oh, I've got so much to pack. Oh, okay. So this thing ought to be about ready to burp. Hose is getting warm. Which means the thermostat is beginning to open. Temperature gauge reads there. All right. Okay. It's been flushed 4 times. I used Dawn the first time around, twice actually. Then I used Purple Power, or Super Clean. And that actually got it down to clear water with a couple little globules of oil. Flushed it all out, put straight water in it, and then the oil slick started coming back in. Flushed it all back out one more time, filled it up with antifreeze. It actually looked pretty good last night. It's almost 24 hours ago. And we are, looks pretty dark. Looks like oil to me. Yep. So, you know, as the kids say, we're just gonna send it. We're just gonna go. We're gonna run it. You can see the hoses are sweating again. So I will pick up some bulk hose and bring it with me. Now, yesterday, when I used the vacuum hose to suck the oil out of the radiator, you can see that's how much oil I got, and that's all coolant. And this is about a quart, this container. So we're talking maybe half a pint. I don't think that's enough to worry about, and that's over at least 500 miles. So I'm gonna have to keep an eye on oil consumption. You know, just in general, this thing burns oil anyway. And then whatever's going into the cooling system. Hopefully when I checked the head bolts, I didn't open the crack up. I was hoping to seal it. But I checked them all at 80, and it's sitting at 80. And apparently that is what cracked it, because it's supposed to be at like 55 or something. And I always torque them a little higher so I don't blow a head gasket. But apparently these engines are pretty weak in that spot, which is not a good place to be weak. But, you know, 300,000 miles on it, I can't, you know, I can't really fault it much. Especially, I've got the new engine over there. I need to go load it up here right now in a minute, except the battery's dead. We're gonna steal the battery out of this. And once I get back to Oklahoma, Kansas, then pull this one out and start working on swapping in the 2.3. It needs to happen. Alrighty. So this is Saturday. It is, I don't know, 2 o'clock-ish. I just got my first tank of gas after leaving. Checked the oil and it's down about a half a quart, which is a little more than, or actually it's significantly more than what it ever used to use oil. But I pulled the little vent on the radiator cap, and what came out of the overflow was coolant with some little globules of oil, but not like that oil slick that was on there. So maybe it was just trapped oil from when the head was off. I don't know on that for sure. The hoses are no longer sweating oil. They are spongy, but they're, you know, there wasn't a whole lot of pressure in them, so I think we'll be okay on that. However, there's a much worse problem. Could be a problem. I'll tell you about it. I'll show you next time I stop. But that trailer is very light duty, and it's not strong. I mean, it's not built real strong. And it was built to have a mattress in it, people sleep in it. It wasn't built to haul stuff. And I knew that. And it really, realistically, it isn't so much overloaded or anything. I ran across the scales and it came out at 2,300 pounds, which is fine. I think it handled the problem. But I looked underneath it, and that trailer is C-channel steel all the way around. And that's it. It doesn't have any cross members underneath it. It has one 2x4 screwed into it, and that's it. It's just plywood for a floor. And that plywood is pretty rotten. So I've got an engine, 2 transmissions, a crap ton of manifolds. I mean, I've got a lot of weight there, and I'm worried. I'm scared I'm going to hit a big bump. The axle's going to bottom out against the frame, maybe. I've got about 2 inches of play. And then all that weight's just going to come right through the floor of the trailer. The other problem I noticed underneath there, and I don't know why the hell they built it this way, is the tongue is a pipe. It comes through the front of the trailer, and it's welded, and it's gusseted, and it's strong. There. It comes back to a cross member, and there's about 1/4 to 1/2 inch gap between the cross member and the end of that pipe. And there's just a U-bolt holding the end of that pipe to the plywood above it. That's it. And I've got this thing loaded so tongue heavy that, again, I'm afraid it's just going to bend that tongue. Now, if it does, it's not, I mean, it's not going to wreck me. I'll have to pull over and figure something out, but if that floor drops out, it probably still won't wreck me, but it will definitely wreck whoever's behind me, and that will suck. So I'm hoping and praying that everything works out okay and that the floor isn't as rotten as I thought it was. Let's see. It's bowed, but I don't know if it's bowed from the weight or if it's bowed because it was bowed and it got damp and whatever, but it's there. If I ever stop at a gas station and see a 2x4, I might grab it just in case. I don't know. So that's something I'm worried about. As far as the engine goes, as far as the truck goes, I'm not too worried. It's been really stable. It's very, you know, it's very tongue heavy, it's very tail heavy. So the front of the truck is pretty well off the ground. When I ran across the scales, it said I was only about 400 pounds on the front tires, which is not right. The steering is very light, but it's not wandering. It is following the ruts in the road from the studded tires, but you know, they all do that. They call it tram lining. I'm running 60 right now and doing fine. It's, you know, pretty weak on the hills, but you know, it's weak on the hills anyway. It's you know, it's tired. It's got 300,000 miles on it and a cracked block. And then I'm not running the 5th gear, which frankly is a pain in the ass because the gear shifter is right here in the side of my leg. If I was in 5th, it wouldn't concern me. Oh well. Yeah, we're doing fine. We're making okay time. I got caught behind a guy. I was going 45. I don't know why, but I didn't have enough power to pass him, so I just stayed behind him. Gas mileage was, I think, 16.6 miles a gallon, which is probably closer to 17.6 because the odometer's off. We're doing fine. We're doing good. So hopefully everything stays going good. And I'll be back with you guys on the next stop. As you can see, obviously, this is all stuff that was there before me. So we got a false positive. As you can see, there's a lot of oil in there. Coolant is yellow. The oil mixed with coolant is beige, so as you can see here, there's still quite a bit of oil. But it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So, yep, we're just going to keep plugging on. We're doing alright. It's chewing up gas like you wouldn't believe, though. I'm not really sure why, but I'm just going to keep moving on. Okay, so here's what I was talking about. The tongue over there, so it's pretty gusseted, it's pretty strong there. But then you get back here, and that's it. It's just held to the plywood. That's all. And then this is what's really got me worried. We got a 2x4 cross member. 2x4 at the end and a 2x4 here at the front. This right here is pretty rotten. You see where it's bulging out at the edge of the metal up here in the corner, and over there is bulging. You can see the bow in it. There's enough room between here and there for an engine to fly out. Axle wise, we're doing okay. I don't see any signs that it's bottomed out anywhere. Springs are overkill. Yeah, so it's got me worried, maybe for no reason. Okay, we're at the second fuel stop, and we're not getting good mileage. we're not getting good oil mileage. We have gone 300 miles, and we have burned 2 tanks of gas, and we have burned a quart of oil. So 300 miles to a quart of oil isn't great, but I've got it. 150 miles to a tank of fuel is not good. And we seem like we're averaging, well, we got 15 miles to this tank. We got 17 and a half to the last tank, which is not great, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, I checked the water again, and I got a bunch of basically oil foam out of that first little kind of, and then the rest of it was all coolant. So hardly any oil, like the big oil slick, none of that. It's either completely mixed or there just isn't very much. It's like all whipped up. No leaks yet. The water pump doesn't seem to be leaking, but I've got the new one back there in case it does. So we're going to hit the road again and keep going. It's dark. The sun has set here about half an hour ago. And I'm going to try for Baker City. I think it's about 100 miles away, I think. I should be able to make it. I mean, it really isn't very late right now. It's only 4:45, so I'm tired, but, you know, we should be fine. So we're going to hit the road again and see what happens. Alrighty, this is the morning of day 2. We are in Baker City, Oregon. So it doesn't feel like we made any time yesterday, but having a detour down through Portland wasn't fun. Let's see. Checked the oil this morning, and I was up on a hill, so it should have been low. It was right on the full line, so I must have overfilled it at the last stop. There wasn't anything dripping underneath the truck. The only one spot I did see was at the bottom of the overflow hose, and it was just like 2 little drops. So it was in there. I checked the water this morning, and it's, you know, the Forbidden Milkshake. But the oil was, you know, getting dark, but it's there's no coolant in it. So we're still looking good. I don't see any leaks. I don't see anything. The hoses still look like they did. Nobody stole the trailer. Kind of a weird situation at this Motel 6 here. They don't really allow trailers. You know, so my whole rig, I was sticking out 5 feet from the space, so they made me unhook the trailer. The cool thing was, they gave me the room right in front of it, so I could you know, keep an ear out for it, but nobody messed with anything. I filled up last night, and the gas gauge is reading just over half, and I don't know what's up with that. But it took, you know, because it wasn't empty, but it took almost 8 gallons, which is about what it should have been. So I'm wondering if my gas gauge isn't going out. Hopefully not. Yeah, other than that, we're doing fine. There's some frost on things. It was about 25 last night. So the roads could be bad. Hopefully not. But we are ready to go. I did run an extra strap across the bottom of the trailer. I had to basically hook the strap leaf spring to leaf spring. It's the only place I could tie onto it. And the idea is, if the sides of the plywood in the floor are rotten enough that the plywood drops down, it'll drop down on that strap and sit there, and then I'll see it when I make my occasional stops. Whew. I need to get some shampoo. These guys, they didn't have any shampoo. It's been my experience. You know, you go to a hotel, there's a little bottle of shampoo, a little bottle of conditioner, or maybe even one of those little ketchup pouches, you know. They had bar soap, so I had to wash my hair with bar soap. Oh well. pick up some shit. But we are ready to go. Everything's hooked up and ready. Checked out. Straps are all tight. Oil's full, coolant's full. Engine's warmed up. Everything's defrosted. We're good. So we'll catch back up with you maybe on the next fuel up. Probably catch back up with you either if there's a problem, hopefully not, or next time I put oil in it, and we'll kind of track how many miles I got. See you then. Morning. This is day 3 of our trip. No real serious developments to speak of. I got fuel. It couldn't have been 40 miles ago. I got fuel not too far back, and the gauge is reading half, but I knew it was already off. It always seemed to be off by at least a quarter. I think it's more like off by a third. So I'm not too worried about it, other than once I leave here and head east, there's nothing until you get to Evanston, Wyoming. I'm going to make sure that this is topped off before we go. I was down a quart of oil this morning, so I did about 750 on a quart of oil, which is great compared to what I was expecting, but it's, in the real scheme of things, burning a quart of oil every 700 miles is not a good thing. But with the rings being what they are, and with whatever oil is leaking into the cooling system, it's pretty good. So my one worry about this thing pumping so much oil into the radiator that I would eventually run out of oil before I could check it, I'm not really worried about that anymore. The hoses are very spongy, but they're dry. So, and then this thing, it's got a 16-pound radiator cap in it, but it's not holding 16 pounds. It might be holding 10 if I'm lucky. I'm sure the oil has deteriorated the rubber seal and the radiator cap. So my fear of this thing blowing hoses, I'm not as worried about that as I was. The radiator was down a little bit of water this morning. About a water bottle's worth. I know I did not put a water bottle. It's worth, or I did not dump a water bottle into the radiator. I have a jug in the back of coolant. So I did stop off last night. I missed my turn for the hotel, and so I went to turn around. The parking lot was a car wash there, so I went ahead and washed the truck just to get the tree sap off of it, and it just looked like hell. That's one of the things. If you have a vehicle, it looks like hell anyway. It doesn't really look any worse when it's dirty. It definitely doesn't look any better when it's clean. But when you have something that actually looks decent, it's shiny paint, and it's dirty and nasty, it just looks horrible. Of course, that's my opinion, but, oil's okay, coolant's okay. We're going to top off fuel. I'm just warming it up right now. I'm going to go turn in my key and hit the road. I didn't sleep very well. I got about 4 hours of sleep last night. So we'll see. I'll probably have to pull off and take a nap or something on them. We're not making real great time. I'm doing just shy of 400 miles a day. I like to do about 600 miles a day. I'm not 100% sure why. Well, my best guess is that, like during the summer I did pretty good. And I was going roughly the same speed as what I'm going now. I mean, this thing is really terrible on the hills, but I'm running 60, 65 where I was running like 55 with the Jeep. But the difference is the days have gotten a lot shorter, and then a time change too, that it's dark at 5 o'clock, and before I used to run until 8 or 9 o'clock. So that's another 3-4 hours of driving, another 150, 200 miles anyway. But I think that's the big issue here. So if I'm running 400 miles a day, I'm not going to make it in my usual 4 days. so it'll probably end up being Tuesday before I get home. And of course, Thanksgiving is Wednesday. But whatever. We're just gonna keep going. Hopefully we don't have any bad things happen. Check the trailer out, everything's fine on it. Everything's fine on the truck. So I'm gonna go hit the road now, turn in my key and get out of here. 25 miles an hour. It is a hell of a hill, but this is tired. There we go, I think we're up to 35. Of course, the gear spacing doesn't help. Third gear is a little too tall, and second gear is a little too short. Got the four ways on, I got the beacon on. Hopefully nobody runs my ass over. Yep. Well, we made it. Okay, this is Tuesday. I'm home. I got in last night about 6:30 or so. So recap on the trip. I flew into Washington to get my 81 Courier, Whitey. And you guys, if you haven't seen the other videos of the build-up and restoration of the truck, you can go check that out when you want to. But regardless, this is my 81 Ford Courier. This truck and I have been through hell together. I've had it for 13 years. When I got it, it was completely rusted out. The farmer who owned it was going to turn it into a trailer, cut it in half and make a pickup bed trailer out of it. So the floorboards were completely rotten. Like, you could sit in the truck and put your foot on the front tire on either side of the truck. And I got it basically in trade for a little bit of labor, about an hour's worth of labor. Limped it home, the clutch was bad on it, to the point where you pull up to a stop sign, you stop without touching the clutch, and then you just kind of let the truck creep and go. I had a clutch disc in the shed, Ford Courier, and within an hour of getting it home, I had it back on the road with a new clutch, fixed the leak in the carburetor. Or actually, I put a Weber on it because the Nickies, I've never had good luck with those Nickies and Hitachi carburetors. And I've been running it for years. And when I got the truck, I had a really nice B3000, and I didn't want to tear it up, hauling stuff with it and tow it and whatnot. This truck would actually out-tow it, at least bottom end would out-tow it. Once you got on the highway, the 3000, the V6 had a lot more power. Forgive the wind noise, plus their power company's trimming trees away from the power lines. But anyway, I got it because if I was going to tear one up, I'd tear up one that was already tore up. And I fell in love with the truck. It was a great truck. And everything that I ever wanted to do, anything I ever asked of this truck, it would do it. It may have done it slow, it may have done it weak, it may have rattled, and it smoked like hell since the day I got it. It always did it. And so I sold the nice truck, and I kept this truck, fixed it up. I put a wrecked cab on it that it wasn't rusted out, but it had a lot of damage on the passenger side. You see that video here? And so I ran that cab for years, but living in Washington State, the cab leaked like a sieve and it started to rust out really bad. Plus, you had to slam the hell out of the passenger door. So I got this cab, and it sat on the back of my truck for almost a year, and I wasn't able to use the truck. So I finally said last year, when we had our COVID furloughs, I figured, okay, 2 weeks, I'm gonna have this truck restored, because I had accumulated a whole bunch of Courier parts. And then when we moved from Oklahoma to Washington, I drug all that crap with me. And I accumulated more stuff in Washington. So when we made a decision to move back out here, I said, I'm not dragging that crap with me again. It's going on the truck. So 2 weeks, I'm gonna have this truck done. Yeah, right. It took me all of summer, and it was probably October before I had the truck pretty well done. At least as done as it is. Still didn't put the new engine in it though. I have a Turbo Coupe 2.3 that's destined to go in this, but it's disassembled right now, it needs to be put together. My thought was, it's going to go in when this engine blows, because, you know, it smokes so bad it's going to blow soon. 100,000 miles later, 13 years later, it's still running. It's gutless. Oh man. So this trip, we're going to see what it does, or what it did. This trip we saw what it did. So it's still using oil. This last summer, I had a buddy of mine, I rebuilt a head for it. I had a head that came off an engine. The guy overheated it, blew the head, got a reman head, put it on it, ran it for about a month, and then the bottom end went. So he saved the new head off of it. Couldn't return it, you know, but he saved it. It had been sitting in a shed forever, so it had gotten water in it. It was full of leaves and dirt. Took it all apart. I ground the valves, cleaned everything up, lapped everything, got it ready. Perfect. And so I gave him that head to swap, because the big problem with this engine was the valve seals were bad and it smoked terribly and it used a lot of oil. So one thing I didn't have with that head was the cam towers for the cam bearings. So we reused the old one off my engine. Well, you're not supposed to do that. You have to have the engine line board, because they don't always line up perfectly. So when he got it all together, fired it up, it ran for about 2 minutes and it seized the cam. When he loosened the head bolts a little bit, everything was fine. So he ended up rebuilding my original head, put it all back together, and it ran perfect. The smoke was gone, mostly. Where before, if it idled for a long time, it would smoke terribly. You'd sit at a traffic light, big plume of smoke. You'd sit at a drive-through, big plume of smoke. Anytime it was idling, it would just smoke horribly. If you're going down a long hill and you hit the throttle at the bottom of the hill, it'd blow a big puff of smoke. So when they rebuilt the head, you know, when we did the valve seals, all that was gone except the bottom of the hill thing. It'll still blow a big, you know, puff of smoke when you get to the bottom of the hill. And that's the rings. The rings are shot. And so I noticed when I first started driving it after I got the head done, my oil consumption went from about 450. Actually, whenever I would change the oil, I'd put in 3 quarts of oil and 1 quart of Lucas. So I would get about 700 miles to that first quart of oil. And then I'd get about 6, I'd get about 5, and then I'd get about 4 out of the final quart, and then I'd put another quart of Lucas in. So my oil consumption was now 1,000 miles, and then by the next quart I was at 700, and then I noticed some oil in the radiator. So I flushed everything out and it was fine. It was great. And at that point we sold our house, we moved away from it, parked everything at the in-laws, and I started bringing the cars out one by one. So this one had been sitting since August. I hadn't started it since at least September. And then when I came out to check it on the last trip where I got the DeSoto and I drove the bus loaded with our stuff, I noticed a pretty big oil slick in the radiator. It was black oil, pretty deep, so I figured it was probably about 1 quart of oil in the radiator. So this trip, I rigged up a vacuum can and sucked out as much of the oil as I could. And it wasn't that much, it was about half a pint. I thought it was 1 quart, but half a pint. Flushed everything out, and I had residual oil, but it wasn't too bad. And then, so like you saw in the video, when I left, there was some oil, but hardly any. And then as the trip progressed, it got worse and worse and worse. Okay, so as you can see here, this is all oil. That's coolant. This was the first one I drained off when I got the first fuel up. Now after that, well, the first and the second one actually, but as you can see, it's about, I think this is 28 ounces. So that's probably 15 ounces or so of oil. Maybe, I don't know. It's half, or a little less than half. So this was the next couple fill ups. And as you can see, it's mostly oil. And this was the last one where all I was getting with oil was oil. And it was thick enough that it didn't want to go through the cap very well. So you'd squeeze it and it would kind of trickle out this oil, and eventually it would run out of pressure and it wouldn't get all of it. But this is all oil. There's just a little bit of coolant at the very bottom of that. So as you can see, as the progression goes, more oil, more oil, more oil. So I need to flush it out, fill it back up with coolant. It's still running. It's still running great. No signs of it blowing up. It's not really getting any worse, really. It's just because I cleaned everything out and it was very clean. It was freshly starting to pump the oil up, and the oil pretty much stays in the system. So as you can see, it just accumulated. As far as oil consumption goes, I used... So when I started the trip, I had a full crankcase of oil. And then the first trip I had to put, it was the first or second fuel up, I had to put oil in it. I did overfill it some. And so then I went about 700 miles or so, had to fill it up again. And I haven't actually done the math on it, but the second quart of oil went a lot further. It went 1,000 miles. Yeah, about 1,000 miles. So we did okay there. And I literally had the foot to the floor almost the entire way. Every little hill you came to, any of them that you would just climb up or you lose a little bit of speed and climb up, this thing was down. There was the one scene I shot where I was 25 miles an hour and the big rigs are passing me, up this mountain hill. So every hill you came to, I lost power. And as a matter of fact, when I finally, I was going east on I-70 and then I turned south, straight south to come home, there was a hell of a headwind. I'm guessing 40 mile an hour headwind. And I couldn't get over 50 with this. So the last 3 hours that I was running, the last 150 miles, 180 miles, I was literally foot to the floor the entire time. Even when I went downhill, I just kept it to the floor because I wanted to get up as much speed. I think I hit 62 miles an hour was the fastest I ever got, and that was a big hill. And then I had to go up the other side, and yeah, so that should have blown it up. I mean, really, what engine's designed to be wide open throttle for that amount of time? But the catch can, I have an oil catch can on it. I had to drain it once. It was mostly water. It's empty. It's empty. There's nothing in it. So, blow-by wise, I don't know. It's just gutless. I mean, the two liters were never powerhouses. They were torquey, but they weren't powerhouses. But this isn't even all that heavy. And the trailer. At one point, I looked underneath there, and I could see that because I got my cherry picker disassembled, my other small cherry picker disassembled in there, and so all the square channel is laying lengthwise up the trailer up against the side, and so I can look underneath it and I can see the chain on the end of sticking through the floor. So I'm gonna go look at that here in a minute, and I'll bring you guys down there with me. We'll see just how bad it got. Yeah. But yeah, I made it. It was slow. It was expensive. I was getting 11 miles of the gallon most of the trip. I got down 9.5 miles a gallon was the worst. This last fill up was 10.5 miles a gallon. Yeah, so it's going to do better once it's empty. But the good news is, one of the guys in the Courier group on Facebook offered me an engine. He had an engine and tranny out of the B2000. He says it's good. He's going to bring it down to Edmonds. I'm going to meet him down there. I might meet up with Puddin's Fab Shop when I'm down there, maybe. I don't know. I've talked to him about it still. But I'll pick up that engine. We're just going to drop it in real quick and have it back up and running as a 2 liter. The 2.3, I need to get it, reassemble, rebuild, and then we will have it ready to swap, and then I'll put it in NA first, and then when I get everything all situated for the turbo and the wiring harness and all that, then we'll make the swap. Then I'll pull the engine out, get the wiring harness all situated, put the engine back in, finish that, and it'll be fuel injected, it'll be turbocharged, it'll be good. That's the plan for this. But for right now, I'm going to keep driving it, pushing oil into the coolant. We'll keep an eye on it until I get the 2 liter swap into it. And you guys will be with me for that. And yeah, I'm glad to be home. I will say this last trip was the most comfortable out of all of them. You can't even describe why. The bus has an air ride seat, but for whatever reason, it wasn't that comfortable. Half the time I was, driving like this, keeping myself up. The Jeep, you sit in that bench seat and there's nothing supporting you. The Volvo wasn't too bad, but you're kind of crammed into it. So once you're into it, you're cocooned into it. You can't really move anywhere. It's fairly comfortable, but it's not that great. This truck, though, the only two negative things I can say about it is, for some odd reason, the steering wheel's over here. So you're driving it like this. And the gear shift in 4th gear is right in your side of your thigh. 5th gear, it's over here. It's not a problem. Whenever I could run the cruise control, which wasn't very often, then, you know, I could put my feet wherever I wanted to, and it was great. But other than that, you know, I don't have any knots. You know, I feel fairly comfortable. I'm down in the seat, and I'm good. Everything's fine. So one of the first things I'm going to do is I'm going to get in a steering column, and I'm going to move it. Fat up some brackets or something, I'm going to move it. But that's it for this trip. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you want to. I enjoy making these videos. I make them for me as much as I make them for you. If you have any requests or suggestions, go ahead and drop them there in the comments. And until next time, you guys stay safe.